I don't know if either of you guys were able to watch the video from the Bob Pops. He put out a super good YouTube video of him interviewing the guy who created um, these SSL and top 100 bots that like Garrett G is running into and tweeting about. And basically, he wasn't the guy that he interviewed wasn't on the the coding and development side of it. He's kind of just on like the marketing side of the whole bot. But were either of y'all had the chance to watch that video?
I have not seen that one,
No.
no.
So, and it's a reasonably short video, and it doesn't go like super in depth with this guy about about what the bot is, but basically he explains that obviously there's a limited amount of stuff that you can do on the ground. So ground based mechanics are significantly easier to code than aerial mechanics. So obviously you can only turn left or right, and you can't pitch up or down. You can't air roll like on the ground. So it's a limited amount. And then as far as the ball goes, the ball is just gonna be on top of your hitbox. So it's significantly easier to code to catch a ball and flick it than it is to say air dribble it, because that's a constant changing thing with significantly more inputs than say just a ground dribble. And so that's basically why you have these bots that are just ground based, and that's a pretty big thing that people can spot why that they can tell that the bot is actually a bot when you get into these higher level games. Like Garrett had posted that he was a 1930 MMR and ran into a bot, and it was pretty easy to tell because the bot, outside of I think like one situation I watched in that clip, he didn't go for aerials at all. He was completely ground based, and then the rotations were obviously very off for a level that I think Drees was in one of the clips with one of the bots. I don't know if that was the same game or not, but Drees ended up losing with this bot against, I think it was two other pros. But yeah, he goes into talking about why they, coded it the way they have and why it's a ground-based bot right now. But he did talk about the fact that they are still working and still pushing to continuously improve it and give it an aerial side of its, being, and make it, and they are wanting to develop a full SSL bot that could do everything that, from not just the ground but also in the air. And he basically kind of hinted that he really wasn't worried about getting banned or anything as far as like Psionics goes. He says, well, these are all on alt accounts. I don't do this on my main. He said he has 4 alt accounts in the top 100 right now whenever this interview took place, which is quite a bit and shows, I think, a lot to what these bots, even just on a ground-based level, are capable of. But it's definitely concerning to hear that he's not really concerned that there's going to be much repercussions out of this. And he says, well, they're not my main accounts. But I'm sitting there listening to that, and I'm like, if I were Psionics, I would just IP ban that guy. I'm not just account banning that person. There's a more permanent solution. And if you get IP banned, if you can find a workaround that's not a hassle and a half, like, props to you. Because I can't see with the current state of where the bots are at, and they're so new in development and how much they have changed how ranked is going right now, I'm hard pressed to believe that they don't take the harshest action against these people whenever the time comes for that. Anything but like IP banning them and just like making sure that those guys never touch the game again. I just don't see anything but that happening.
Yeah, and looks like there's a question in chat, like how the bots get into comp. By what I have heard, I read somewhere on Twitter, someone made an explanation for it. The way that it works is, guys know how when you load up Bacchus mod, it says injecting into Rocket League. Apparently, it's a program similar to that, where it injects all the code and stuff into Rocket League as you load up the game, and then they're able just to play the game like that. By what I know, so
Yeah,
I think with Psionics, if they're to make a solution for this, they have to, without removing Bacchus mod, because Bacchus mod, people love playing with Bacchus mod in free play, so if people couldn't play on free play anymore with Bacchus mod, that'll already hurt a lot of players, especially grinding pros that are trying to get up to that level, because they use Bacchus mod for so much. So if anything, they probably need a different program to try and inject Bacchus mod, so that way it's not as easy for these bots to do so, because now it's getting to the point where, yeah, there's bots, but there's win trading bots to get accounts up. I think I saw a clip yesterday where it was one of the bots TikToks or something like that. One of the win trader bots TikToks. And they actually post on TikTok them doing this stuff, win trading the top 100 and stuff. And there were 3 win traders in the same lobby with Ajax in a 2v2. So they had the person on Ajax team bump Ajax while the other 2 win traders were scoring goals like in that game. So Ajax was just getting bumped, and this guy doing the bots and win trading was just laughing with his friends in the call since all 3 of them were in the same game, and Ajax is just forced to lose the game. And of course, if he leaves early, he's getting banned for like 5 to 15 minutes depending on how much he's done it. So yeah,
and that's really like disappointing. I mean, that situation in and of itself very clearly shows, you know, the current state of how this is. And this is very new. This is only in the past, you know, month, maybe 2, that this has really come to light and become an issue within the scene. This is a very new thing that's happening, and if you let this progress on further, I can't see it going anywhere but, you know, just catastrophically. And like you were saying from the question in chat, yeah, the guy explained it in the interview that when Bagismod says like injecting DLL files, he said it's pretty much the exact same thing. It's a DLL file that just changes the way that your game runs and loads up. So it's a client side like file that alters the game, and then, you know, essentially instead of you from your controller giving your own inputs, there's already inputs within the game files itself, but it's its own, you know, AI that's doing this. So as far as like Rocket League goes, Rocket League can't detect. I would assume that Rocket League and Psyonix can't detect that you are on a flat like basis that you are botting, because at the end of the day, it's still just getting inputs from your client, right? Which is your game. So it just sees the inputs. You would have to go into, and that's going to be a difficulty with all this, is you would have to start then scanning the files of everybody's clients. I don't know how. I'm not an expert in all that. I don't know like what all that would entail. Or you would have to look at like individual gameplay, and you'd have, you know, a situation where I'm not familiar if y'all. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with CS:GO, but when you got to high enough of a level, you could review games that people had reported for possible cheaters, because, you know, sometimes people are just really good at flicks with the sniper, and, you know, that's really like, well, I can't determine that they're cheating. You might,
their
we
Overwatch
could end up
system,
seeing a,
right? That's what it was.
yeah, Overwatch, yeah. We could end up seeing maybe a system like that, but then that also comes into you know, how truthful is everybody. But if CS:GO has made it work, then I would assume Rocket League could implement a similar system. But regardless, I think there's going to have to be a major change, or you know, something shaken up. There's got to be a solution of some sort before this gets out of hand. Because if this gets out of hand, I think Psyonix is just going to be so far behind the 8 ball that there's nothing left to be done.
Yeah, they're already losing players just because, like, okay, you know what? We're gonna wait here. Now, I might just be at the perfect MMR where I haven't faced a win trader or a bot or anything like that. I'm sitting around 1800 right now. I was playing with PJ and twos yesterday. We were playing at around 1800 and 1900 level. And we didn't run into anything like that. We played for a good hour or so. We didn't run into win traders, anything like that. I haven't personally ran into anything like that. Granted, I'm not top 100, but I'm also not super low ranked as well. You'd think there would at least be some bots around this rank, but no, I haven't found any yet. So it's interesting to see. Like, I would like to see if there is a way for them to get either like a distribution graph of like where most people report like these bots and these win traders and everything like that. Because right now, I mean, I personally haven't seen anything, but I know people who have ran into them like multiple times in a row. So
yeah. And then I understand this might be kind of a controversial topic, and we kind of brushed it off earlier, but I do want to touch on the whole view botting situation that got brought up on Twitter within the past week or two. Specifically because I think we can all agree that we understand that view botting and follow botting is a thing that has been around on Twitch for quite some time, and it's not anything crazy new. Or anything that you're like, wow, that never happens. I mean, it happens to large creators all the time. But my specific, if anybody is not aware of what happened, OSM basically compiled some evidence and outed Widow via, air quotes for all of those listening and not watching. You know, evidence and outed Widow for, you know, quote unquote view botting. and he made a pretty decently sized thread with quite a bit of evidence that does, in my opinion, as somebody looking at the evidence, does show that there's definite view botting. I won't touch on necessarily follow botting with her. I think the follow botting accusation there was with Instagram, and she did, in her Twitlonger response, kind of had an explanation for that when she was featured on the main Rocket League um,
Yeah, it was the same day
channel.
that on the, like, literally, if you opened up Rocket League, it was Community Spotlight Widow. It was
Yeah.
that exact
Mhm.
same day where she got all those
Yeah.
followers.
So that's a completely understandable, explanation for that. But my issue with a lot of the accusations and evidence and follow up with all of that, as far as like on Widow's side, I understand that there, in most situations, is an explanation for something. But when you have like multiple, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is suspicious, this is, and then you come back and you say, well, here's an explanation for that. Here's an excuse. Here's, this, that, and the other. It starts to look, I guess, more suspicious. Is as deep as I'll go into that. But when you have an excuse for like everything, you know what I mean? It's like that guy that keeps showing up late to work. You know what I mean? It happens a couple of times. Life happens. You get a flat tire. You know, kids were difficult getting out of the door for school. You know what I mean? Most bosses are pretty understandable that life happens and you're not going to be perfectly 365 days a year on time for work. But it's the guy that's missing, like, you know, 3 times a week is showing up late to work, and he always has some kind of excuse. Oh, there was traffic, or there was I almost hit a dog and then I had to go bring it back to. You start to lose the credibility,
Yeah.
at least in my eyes, when there's like always an excuse. When I feel like at the end of the day, the boss knows that the dude is just not punctual with time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I feel with. I mean, this is kind of like the second big thing surrounding Widow in like the past like 6 months or year. There was I'm not sure
Hmm.
if y'all familiar with the whole doxing situation when she was giving away I think it was a PC, um,
Yeah.
and
It was a PC
uh,
giveaway, and
yeah,
I think the guy who won the giveaway messaged in response to get to be like to ask like, hey, when am I gonna get the PC? And that's when the whole supposed doxing situation did happen. Of course, we do have to make sure that we say supposed, and
yep, absolutely.
and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, the main thing is like it's not normally Widow that ends up defending her with evidence. It's normally other people. Like in regards to the view botting situation, it was GC in disguise and Rockets.
Hmm.
I think that's how you pronounce his name, Rocket S or something similar to that. I think both
Yeah.
of them were the ones who ended up defending Widow and actually supporting evidence. But when it came to
Well,
Widow's actual reply to it, like you said, it was more excuses rather than actually showing the evidence itself. Like if it weren't
yeah.
for GC in disguise and for Rocket S, if it weren't for them, then this situation would be a lot more like still would be extremely suspicious. Now it does seem like it still does feel that there is something going on, even if it isn't view botting or follow botting, but
Hmm.
it still feels suspicious, especially with, like you said,
Yeah.
so like the second big thing that's happened in the last year or so here with Widow. Like, why is it GC in disguise and Rocket S coming forward with the evidence and not Widow? I mean, if
There's
anything, it
something.
does show it shows a little bit of laziness on that side of things. I mean, this is your
Hmm.
career, so shouldn't you be trying to defend? Like, if you like the main thing that
Yeah.
I know from people who actually study like body language and detecting liars and everything like that, the biggest thing is people who are actually innocent, they deny. One, they instantly deny whatever happened, but number two, they're willing to do whatever they can to prove whatever accusation it was wrong, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas with Widow, she said everything was wrong right off the bat, so that's still in alignment with telling the truth. But it's the fact that after that, it's not working with everybody to show the
Yeah.
evidence for it. That's the big thing for me. It's people
There's
doing it
lacking a
out of their
sense of
own time.
transparency.
Exactly. Whereas it's
Yeah.
other people coming forward with the evidence,
Hmm.
not herself.
Well,
That's
that was one thing I wanted to touch on. You said that like Rocket S came forward with. I thought actually he had posted a screenshot showing he took like um a lot of big Twitch streamers from like CS:GO and Rocket League and all these content creators that stream on Twitch, and showed their percentage of their viewers, what percentage of those were default accounts, and everybody sat at or below 20% of their viewers that they have in their um in their streams are default accounts. Obviously, if you're getting view botted, you're gonna have default accounts. These aren't unique, actual people. And then Widows was at, I think it was 58%, if I'm not wrong. And that was Rocket S that, or Rockets. I'm not sure. I apologize if that's incorrect, but
Yeah.
he was the one that that posted that screenshot, and OSM actually retweeted it. So I thought that
There was
him posting that
Rocket
was,
made a follow-up tweet for it. He made a follow-up after he got more evidence, looking at GC in Disguise posts as well. He was able to he was able to do a lot more, and he ended up finding out that Widow is more than likely innocent. So in regards to that thing, but yeah, in regards to GC in Disguise and Rocket S and that whole situation, they did well in showing that the accusations were false, but overall it still shows, especially with the other incident this year, that how Widow is still not very much in the clear in regards to suspicion. At the end of the day, we can't go around. That's where I feel like with OSM, it was very wrong of him to accuse something, because a lot of the information, GC in Disguise really pointed this out, a lot of information that OSM used for evidence, in quotes, was cherry-picked evidence, where he cherry-picked certain days on certain weeks. Now, if anybody who knows anything about statistics, is you need consistency over time. You can't just cherry-pick evidence, because that's straw manning somebody. It's not a good thing to do, especially something that can ruin careers. Now, like Widow or not, especially if she's innocent, she does not deserve to have a career ruined, especially off of accusations. No matter what people think of that.
I actually disagree with you on the statistics side of it being cherry picked. And I say this because if you're going to prove that something is true, you don't need to prove that it's true 100 times out of 100. You need to prove that it's true one time out of 100.
You need to prove it's the statistic deviation. In regards to statistics, it's not 100% what I'm saying. It goes in regards to the standard deviation in statistics, where there's a certain, you can calculate the standard deviation for any sample size, and then if it's true a certain amount if it's true within that standard deviation, then it's most likely true to be the case. And this is what Rocket S did on his follow-up tweet. I believe he calculated the standard deviation of all these different bots and everything like that. Widow was outside the standard deviation, so it was more than likely not true that there was a follow bot. That's the main thing in regards to statistics. Like, if something's been proven once, that can easily be decided as a coincidence, whereas if you do it within the standard deviation, then it's more than likely true. That's where you have enough backing to actually push out a tweet and try to get more evidence in regards to the statistics side of things.
I see what you're saying as far as like the standard deviation goes, but at the same time, if you take evidence and this is just from me looking at what was presented by OSM, this quote unquote evidence that she was supposedly view botting. If you look at that we'll just call it evidence for the sake of English language being easy. If you look at that evidence, you can see without a doubt, and you can call it cherry picked all you want, but if you show that in all these different areas that this is the case, and all these together, it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, and you say, you put these all together, it's a duck, right? And you say, well, that wasn't on Tuesday though, or that wasn't on 2 weeks later. Well, it doesn't. We're trying to prove that the duck exists, not that the duck is consistently there, right? Like that's my issue with. You could say it's cherry picked, but if you have multi-layered level of points to point, that you have it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck. I'm as a person gonna be like, well, that's a duck, even if it's only a duck on Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week, there's no duck. I don't see any duck evidence. I don't think it has to be, across the board. Even if you cherry pick something, that's like saying that somebody's you can say, well, this guy, if you have a friend who you want to say is a bad person, and you quote unquote cherry pick, well, like on this day, he, punched this old lady in the face. To me, I'm like, okay, punching an old lady in the face is by default like you're a bad person. I cannot think of a situation where you're punching an old lady in the face. Okay, it doesn't matter that is the only time in his life he's ever punched a lady in the face. I'm going to decide that at that point he is a bad person, right? So even if you cherry picked, well, oh, that's only he's been alive for 42 years. That's one day out of with 365 out of times 42. That is such a small. It's cherry picked evidence, but it's evidence nonetheless that proves something. That's what I was trying to get at with the. It doesn't have to be true 100 times out of 100. If it's true one time out of it, and I hope you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see what you're
Because
saying.
I do see what you're saying as well.
The main
I don't.
in regards to that, in a situation where you pick, let's say your analogy of, like, say the one time, that's something that, well, if you saw somebody do it, that's 100%. He 100% did in fact punch that old lady in the face. However, if that was the only time that person ever did it in his entire life, it goes to fact, why is this the only time he ever punched an old lady in the face? There might be a reason for it.
Yeah.
Now, it could be he just did it and he's a bad person. Like, no matter what, it's the action that was deplorable, right? Whereas, for example, in these situations with Widow's examples or the cherry-picked evidence from OSM, is the thing about viewbotting is it's something that has to be consistent. If one day Widow just has a bunch of viewers that just pop up on the stream at the very beginning, I'm like, oh wow. I mean, a lot of people are like paying attention to notifications. It could be like, there's a lot of different things that it could be. Whenever you look at an experiment, you have to be able to narrow it down to one variable that changes. With the viewbotting thing, like with OSM, he's pulling out a lot of different kinds of situations that are trying to prove one. Like, what's the premise here? Widow is viewbotting. That's the premise that OSM's trying to prove, and yet, and he's trying to support evidence, but every single piece of evidence is supporting a different premise that is similar to Widow is viewbotting. So that's why when it comes to a logic argument, you have to go down premise by premise, one by one, and seeing which one's true, which one's not. DC in Disguise wasn't, for example, DC in Disguise, she wasn't able to point out that every single point was wrong. She mainly looked at the more cherry-picked evidence in regards to, well, this stream was this stream was this. But in order for a statistic like viewbotting, where you need somewhat consistency, like, oh well, 7 days in a row Widow was having the exact similar viewing at the same time right at the beginning, that's different than, well, on November 11th, she had really high starting viewers, but on the 23rd of December, that's the next time that she had that many viewers. Like, it showed, like, that does show, maybe it does show it's suspicious. It's a lot of viewers at once. But for example, I've seen Fairy Peak start a stream. It starts at 0, and then literally 30 seconds later, he's at 350 viewers. Like, it doesn't exactly show that it's more the philosophical side of things, where you can't go 100% off of evidence unless you have the variables aligning. With Widow, OSM tried to use all these different sources to try and prove one premise, but the thing is, different sources were trying to prove something different. So, for example, the starting viewership thing, that's completely different than somebody viewbotting throughout an entire stream, which is completely different from viewbotting on certain days, on certain weeks. Now, maybe Widow got viewbotted, and that's where, when you're trying to accuse somebody of something, you have to be really sure that the variable you have to be very specific about the variable you're trying to say. For example, if OSM picked out, like, oh well, Widow has a certain amount of bot accounts that view her Twitch stream, and right? He would have to prove consistency over multiple streams at that bot accounts of the same percentage are watching the same time. But then he would have to prove, okay, how is this different from other streamers around her level, until he's able to compile all that evidence to prove one thing. That one thing being her stream has view bots. That would be one thing, but it doesn't necessarily show that she's completely full-on view botting her stream, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I
definitely see what you're saying, and at the end of the day, it's not like she said that she wasn't getting view botted. She admitted and even referenced clips where she was saying, okay, mods, can you get all those
remove
people
the
out?
view bots,
yeah, exactly. There's no denial of the view botting. We can agree that and that's a common thing that happens to large creators. At the end of the day, the bigger question, I would say, is just, was who was behind it, right? And that's
Yeah.
the answer that nobody really knows. I don't think anybody
Mhm.
really. There's probably one person on this planet that knows that it's a person that's doing it. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody has a definitive answer to it. But it's just it's. I think it raises good conversation as far as
Yeah.
the the current state of the community. I think the community's pretty. I don't know. I would say the community's on edge with recent events as far as like the view botting stuff, the bots and ranked. Um, I'd say we're in a I don't know what you would call it. A very just you know I don't know. Words are hard. A very like on edge time period. I think of just a lot of stuff is going on that's stressing a lot of people out. And real quick before we start our wrapping up and everything, look, we had a question from chat. They want to know, what mic do you use? They said it sounds really good.
Okay, I